Today we're going to talk a little bit about behavioral interviewing. This is one of those skills that you're actually going to use for the rest of your life, and it's really important to know how to interview well. You may have already been through some interviews and think you do it pretty well, but I am going to talk to you about some techniques and experiences that you can use to have a successful interview. So let's get started. A behavioral interview has several components to it. First, you'll need to know what your elevator pitch is, or your personal pitch. That would be that 30 to 60-second introduction of yourself. So we'll talk about that. Then you're going to need to know how to answer general interview questions. Now, we may not know what interview questions they're going to ask, but I'm going to give you a technique that will let you answer any question based on an acronym. And that acronym is the STAR method. So we'll dive into the STAR method, which will allow us to answer all sorts of behavioral interview questions. Remember, it's important to be able to describe your soft skills in an interview and talk about the competencies that you have as they relate to the specific job that you're applying for. And then finally, the interview is not over when you leave the room. We definitely need to follow up. So I'm going to give you some techniques and information.
Hi, my name is James, and I'm a finance major.
Hi, my name is James and I'm a finance major.
Hi, I'm Andrea and I'm a business major.
Hi, I'm Joe and I'm an accounting major. Hi, I'm Joe and I'm an accounting major.
I'm it. And so I'm the oldest out of 5 kids. I'm the president of the Organization of African Students. My leadership experience has prepared me for my career. I have been the residence assistant for 3 consecutive years, the head teller at my local bank. Also, I have been the president of the Organization of African Students. I have volunteered a lot of time at my local church. And lastly, I'm the oldest out of 5 kids. I can handle anything.
Hi, I'm Pat. I'm an accounting and philosophy major. I didn't really love accounting, but I fell in love with philosophy when I first got to school. And I also was very into my intramural hockey team. Hi, my name's Pat. I'm an accounting and philosophy major. Now you might be asking yourself, well, that's a strange combination. But what I loved about it was that I used my creativity in my philosophy major, and I got a great management experience in my accounting. I think this is going to be a great mix for when I start in the business world.
Majoring in business, I got to take a lot of different classes. I studied accounting, I had finance, IT, there were statistics, marketing too. But I also took classes in art history and English because I wanted to have a well-rounded education. I didn't want to be too narrow. So I did that. I did a lot of stuff outside of the class too. I played some intramural volleyball, which was really fun. I'm a business major, but I've also taken a lot of liberal arts classes to round out my education. In addition to my studies, I've been a peer mentor to a younger classmate, as well as played on the intramural volleyball team. While they may seem like different activities, they've both helped me with my communication skills as well as my team building.
So, would you like me?
Thank you. Appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed watching my video as much as I enjoyed making it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I hope you can see from that video that the elevator pitch is one of the most important things that you can start your interview with. If you're well prepared, you will definitely look professional. But if you're not, you're going to look like you haven't gotten your stuff together. So it's important to have a strong elevator pitch filled with skills and experiences that you bring to the table, as well as a strong ending. We'll go over the components of the elevator pitch here in a minute. So how do we answer interview questions? Let's get a first glimpse at that by understanding what exactly the employer is looking for. The first thing that employers are looking for is, can you do the job? Are you competent? These competencies can be found in the job description. And they could include things like, are you organized? Are you a team player? Are you motivated? So these competencies will be laid out in the job description, and you want to definitely highlight those so you know that you are hitting them in your job interview through some stories. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. The other thing that they're going to look for is, are you going to love the job? Are you motivated? You can show this a lot of times through nonverbal cues like smiling or being enthusiastic when you answer the questions. And then finally, they want to know if you're going to be a good fit in terms of the people you're working with. Can they tolerate working with you? Do you have the same values? Is this going to be a place that you're going to be successful in? So competency, motivation, and fit are 3 keys that you want to get across in your interview. Some of your most common interview questions, of course, we've talked about the tell me about yourself. I'm going to get into a little bit more detail in just a second. We can also anticipate what are your strengths and weaknesses, and what are your 5-year career goals. These are very common questions that come up in pretty much any behavioral interview. So if we can anticipate them, we'll want to be sure that we know how to answer them. First up, the tell me about yourself. We've seen a quick video showing you some great examples and then some not so great examples. Let's watch this video and get a little bit more insight.
It is a safe bet this will be one of the first questions you will face, and the way you answer it will set the tone for the entire interview. One thing that stays true for this answer every time you are asked: keep it professional. Employers are not asking you this question because they want to know what your favorite color is. They want to know why you are the best candidate for the job. Employers want to hire the best person for the job, and your job is to convince them this is you. As it is most likely the first question you will face in your interview, it is one of the first impressions you will be giving the employer. You want to give the most professional image of yourself as possible. In order to accomplish this, do not volunteer personal information.
Please tell me about yourself.
Well, I'm 23 years old. I was born and raised in this city. I have 2 dogs, and I love basketball.
This candidate has already set himself back. You don't want to give any information about your personal life, but rather your professional life and how it relates to the position you are interviewing for. To do this successfully, you need to prepare and structure your answer highlighting your relevant education, experience, and professional qualities. From the job description, you know what the qualifications for the job are and what skills the employer is looking for. So you want to highlight all of the previous work experience, education, training, and all other professional skills that are relevant to the position. No matter what your work history is, you have transferable skills. If this is your first job in your field, then highlight the skills and training you received from your education as they pertain to the job, and talk about any transferable skills you might have gained from any of your work experience. Highlight your accomplishments as well. If you've received any academic awards or any promotions or commendations from your job, feel free to mention it. Not every position you interview for is going to be exactly the same, even if the job title is. Each company has different needs, so study the job description and figure out exactly what it is they're looking for. Once you figure out what the employer is looking for in a candidate, your job is to be that person. So emphasize the skills and qualifications you have that relate to the job specifically. Try to keep your answers in chronological order. You do not have to recap your professional history year by year, but detailing the experiences and skills that you have gained as you attain them in an organized fashion will leave a good impression on the employer. Your resume can help you with this, as it is in chronological order, and can help you set a timeline. Now that you have the structure, here is a good example.
Please tell me about yourself.
Let's see. I believe I have a very solid background in medical assisting. I earned my degree in medical assisting where I learned valuable skills such as taking vitals, administering injections, explaining treatment procedures to patients, preparing patients for examination, and assisting the physician with examinations. While earning my degree, I worked in customer service at ABC Pharmacy for 3 years as well, where I gained valuable communication skills and learned how to address customers' needs, which enables me to relate and effectively communicate with patients and their needs. I also completed an internship at a health clinic while in school, where I picked up more valuable skills, including updating patient files and medical records, handling correspondence, scheduling appointments, arranging for hospital admission, and help make sure the office ran smoothly. These are all valuable skills which I will hopefully be able to apply to this position and bring to your office.
Remember, when answering the question, tell me about yourself. Keep it professional and do not give any personal information. Highlight your skills from your relevant education and training that will help you in the position. Tell them your work history and transferable skills as it relates to the job you are interviewing for, and do so in an organized, chronological fashion.
Okay, I hope that allowed you a little bit more information about what to fill in with your pitch. Remember, I would probably start out with your name and then lead right into your education. You're here as a Darla Moore School of Business student, when you're graduating, your major, things like that. Then you'll want to get into your relevant experience and skills as it relates to the job. Be sure to provide some accomplishments based on those skills and experiences. And then definitely have a strong ending, wrapping up everything that you've just said. For homework, you'll need to make sure that you have written out your personal pitch, so be sure to incorporate the things that you just learned. Okay, the next question you can anticipate in a behavioral interview is, what are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? Strengths are fairly easy. If you're not quite sure what to key in on, I would look at the job description and make sure that you're choosing skills that are relevant to what they're looking for. You can also use the Berkman to help identify your strengths. Now, the important part to remember with this is that you cannot just say, as my greatest strength, I am very organized and I have good time management. You need to prove it with examples. So this is where you're going to use a story to say how you're organized and how you have time management. You want to provide evidence along the way. So don't just list out your strengths. Be sure to provide proof through a story. And then, of course, your greatest weaknesses are a little bit harder. Wrong answers would be, I don't have any weaknesses, or some of those canned answers like, gosh, I put too much on my plate, or anything that's going to be detrimental to the job. So things like, I'm always a procrastinator, or I'm never on time. We don't want to choose things that are critical to your success in the position. Now, some great weaknesses to choose would be things like public speaking. I'm not great at public speaking unless it's very important to the job that you're applying for. Anything that is a technical skill as it relates to the job. So if there's something that they're going to teach you, but you don't necessarily know yet, you can say that you're not experienced in that area. However, you're a quick learner. Now, the trick to answering your weakness question is that you always want to show how you're working on it and put a positive spin on it. So give some examples of how you're improving in this particular area and make sure that they are specific. For the homework assignment, you will need to make sure that you answer the question, what are your greatest weaknesses? And again, provide evidence that you're working on it. Next up, where do you want to be in 5 years? This is a common interview question, and they're looking for students that can self-assess themselves as well as know where they want to be in the future. So this is a question to see how loyal an interviewer will be to the company, as well as that they have initiative and take ideas about where they want to be in the future and have some sort of direction. Granted, you may not be in that place in 5 years, but you need to have some sort of place to aim. So be sure that you're specific about the industry as well as your skills and how they would relate to that. Some answers that you don't want to include would be, gosh, I want to be rich. I want to be the CEO. I want to take over your position. Or the most common one I hear from students is, oh, I'd like to go back to school or start my own business. That's not showing that people will stay in that particular company, and companies are not going to invest in somebody who's going to leave in a couple of years. Some improved answers would be, I want to grow and learn, and I want to have increased challenges in a specific area. Or I'd like to have some management responsibilities or take on special projects as I grow. Or, I'd like to get involved in different areas of the company and take on new initiatives. And then finally, I want to work for an organization where I can build a career or work with innovative people. So remember to be specific about the industry that you want to be in and your skills and talents and values as you move forward. Okay, the behavioral-based interview. This is important to remember because you want to remember that past behavior is a predictor of future performance. The reason why people use a behavioral interview is because they know that if you were successful in the past and you can prove your accomplishments, then you can bring those to the company and show how you can add value there. Good news is you've already done this. Remember when you applied for college, you turned in specific information that proved that your past behavior would be an indicator of your future success. Things like your SAT scores and your transcripts and the organizations you were involved in high school are all predictors of your future success in college. So the nice thing is you've already done this. You've provided evidence that you were going to be successful based on particular experience. So we're going to do the same thing in a behavioral-based interview. The questions that they're going to ask you, while you don't know what they are going to be centered around the competencies that the employer is looking for. Well, how do we know which competencies they're looking for? We go back to the job description. In the job description, you will see several items that they're specifically looking for that particular position. So if you develop stories around those competencies, you should be able to answer any question that they ask you. The trick is you must provide evidence through stories. Everybody likes a good story, and evidence backs up what you're saying. I'll give you some information on how to do this in a moment. So some general competencies, there's actually two categories here. There are some abilities and then there are personal traits. So the abilities would be things like, can you assume responsibility? Can you communicate effectively? Do you know how to manage projects or analyze information? And then there's personal traits. Are you assertive or flexible or resilient? Do you have honesty and integrity? So all of these competencies would be listed in the job description, and you should be able to prove them through stories. Now, obviously, they're not all listed here, so you'll need to make sure that you understand which competencies they're looking for. And of course, if there's a competency that you're lacking in, this is a great time to understand that you might need some more experience in that area. So find some ways to be able to advance your experience in a particular area and work on that trait so that you can prove it in an interview situation. Okay, so we know what competencies an employer is looking for through their job description. Now we have to figure out how to communicate them in an interview. We are going to use the STAR method. The STAR method is an acronym that stands for situation, task, action, and results. So when you provide a story, when you answer a question, you want to provide a little bit of a brief background about the situation you're in. And then next, you want to make sure that you are explaining the specific task and what you had to accomplish in that situation. A stands for action, and you want to be very careful about making sure that you're talking about the action that you specifically had to take, especially in team or group situations. Be specific about what you had to do, not what the team had to do, because they want to know about you. And then finally, and probably most importantly, are the results. The results are going to be your accomplishments, what you achieved, and they're going to show how you add value. We've already been over this through your resume and your bullet points. Your results really show what you can bring to the company. If you're having trouble thinking about what kind of accomplishments you've achieved, go back to your resume, check out those bullet points, and then think about what you're most proud of or where you've excelled. How did you do the job that you did? So we will use the STAR method to answer every question in the behavioral interview. If they ask you, tell me about a time when you were a leader, you're going to tell them about a time when you were a leader, and you're going to walk right through the STAR story, providing an S, a T, an A, and an R for every step. Let's watch one in action here.
I'm Avi, and I'm a recruiter with PwC. I'd like to welcome you to amp up your interview experience. It's no secret that the job market is pretty tight, and there are more job seekers, more qualified job seekers than there are jobs. That can be a pretty scary thought. But don't worry, I'm here as your personal guide to help you soar through the interview process and get you to the destination of your choosing. My goal today is to share some tips with you on how you can stand out by being yourself, your best self, through the interview process. So here's my plan. I'm going to take you behind the scenes to a fictitious interview, and more importantly, what interviewers might think before, during, and after your discussion. So come with me. Initial impressions matter, and here's what I'm thinking. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie was crooked. He didn't have a spark to him. He didn't look me in the eye, he didn't even smile, and he gave me a handshake that was like a dead fish. It's gonna be a long day.
So John, can you tell me what your proudest moment was and what that meant to you?
Yes, good question. I'm most proud of my GPA. I got 3.93. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more?
Sure. I graduated with a double major in accounting and English. So 3.93 is pretty impressive. I was on the dean's list every semester. And I had a 4.0, but I was sick with the mom for 2 weeks.
So you're probably wondering what I think of John right now. And I was really excited to meet him because his resume was so great. But in the interview, not so good. I asked him that last question to understand what he's passionate about, what makes him tick. And he didn't really give me anything beyond the pages of his resume. He told me his GPA, which sounded more like a way to just impress me. I wanted to get to know him, what makes him tick. I wanted a story, not a fact. He really missed an opportunity there. What a shame. You want to try that again?
Yes.
So John, can you tell me what your proudest moment was and what that really meant to you?
I'm most proud of my business management class. In this class, we had a project that dealt with working with local small business companies. And the team was great. I worked with a lot of talented people, but I had a problem getting along. So what I did was to spend time with all team members to find out what their strengths, weaknesses were, and what they were passionate about.
Oh, great. Well, can you tell me a little bit more?
Yes. We worked with a small business in the community, and I was in charge of coming up with a financial budget and a financial model for the business. The results of our idea made it to the local newspaper, and we were asked to present at a community meeting so that other smaller businesses can benefit from our analysis.
Phew, that was much better. He shared a story with me that let me know what his passions are. Aside from having great academics, he's a team leader and he knows how to motivate people and bring them together. He seemed to really enjoy that teaming process, and he even has community service experience. This one's a keeper. Thanks for joining me on this behind-the-scenes hypothetical interview. I want to leave you with 3 tips for amping up your interview. Tip number 1, first impressions matter. Your interview starts when you walk in the door. Don't let little things like attire or body language sink your ship before you even open your mouth. Tip number 2, storytelling works. Don't regurgitate facts that are on your resume. Use the power of personal stories to convey the essence of who you are and what's important to you. It's easier to be enthusiastic when you're telling a story versus just restating facts. Tip number 3, end with a bang. Make sure you're authentic and memorable. Step up to stand out. I think you're ready to really shine on your interview. Good luck.
Okay, I hope you can see how the STAR story will provide an effective way to answer those behavioral interview questions. So here you'll see some examples of tell me about a time when questions. These are behavioral interview questions. For your homework assignment, you will need to choose 2. They can be on this slide or they can be ones that you have off of Google or your own ones. That's perfectly fine. But you need to provide answers using a STAR story for 2 tell me about a time when questions. Note on this page that there are both positive questions and what I consider negative questions. Things like, tell me about a time when you made a bad decision, or tell me about a time when something didn't go well that you were planning on. These are situations that you'll also have to have examples for, including those positive questions as well. So what you'll want to do is come up with STAR stories based on the competencies that they're looking for. So whenever they ask you any type of tell me about a time when question, you'll be able to answer any question. Okay, so again, go back to the organizational job description and be sure to find those competencies that they're looking for. Highlight them, print it out, whatever you need to do, find your competencies. That's the first step. And then next, you'll actually walk through a specific STAR story. So what I'd like you to do now is go ahead and pause the video and read this over. Note that the person asking the question is, tell me about a time you worked on a team. And then the person answering is using a STAR story for each particular step. So they provide a little bit of the situation, they talk about the task, the action that they took, and then they never leave off the results. So the results here bring home the fact that they can add value. So if you'll take a chance to pause the video and then read that over. Okay, at the end of the interview, they're going to ask you, do you have any questions? And your answer is always yes. Have some questions already prepared. These might be specific to the position. These might be talking about future opportunities or what you're expected to accomplish in that role. Just be careful not to ask any questions that have already been answered throughout the interview process. And of course, you can end with what the next steps are. In other words, when are you going to hear back from them? After the interview is not over. We need to go ahead and reflect and evaluate, record some names, and follow up. So let's kind of see what our action steps are for after the interview. The most important part after the interview is to do some reflecting and evaluating. What did you do well? What could you have done better? You know those questions that you answer where you kind of stumbled and you weren't sure what to answer. Those are ones that you can improve upon for future interviews. So do a good job of reflecting and doing some self-assessment so that you can take that information to the future interview. You want to record names of the people you met, specifically their role in the organization, grab some business cards, and then what I like to do is jot down a few notes about some specific things that you talked about. You can include those things in the thank you note and it makes it more personalized. And of course, we definitely want to send any sort of information that they need after the interview, things like recommendations or referrals, and of course, a thank you note. You want to send it within 24 to 48 hours. Handwritten always stands out. So if you have nice, legible handwriting, I would definitely send one via mail. You can email it, but again, you want to use that TEC method. So thank them, elaborate a little bit, and then compliment them at the end. It shouldn't be any more than 3 or 4 sentences long, but do make it personalized, especially regarding something you spoke about. So at the end of the interview, behavioral interview presentation, I hope you've learned some important things. that you are more in charge of behavioral interview than you think you are. You can lead with information that will allow them to ask more questions about your experience. You can answer your questions using STAR stories, specifically hitting home those results, showing that you can add value. And then, of course, be prepared for the common questions like strengths and weaknesses and your 5-year career goal plan, and tell me about yourself. When you dress professionally and have a good handshake, you're controlling all the elements that you can control, and showing preparation through doing some research and coming up with your STAR stories will ensure that you are prepared for your behavioral interview.